Positional flexibility is going to be the key there. We're just trying to get the best 5 players on the field in the secondary for us.
What's the thing that sticks out from what you've seen of Kirkland versus maybe what you saw on tape of what he did last year? How is he kind of grown and developed?
Well, last year he's a true freshman, so I'm sure at times it's a bit overwhelming to him. His football IQ is really high. He's taking command of the huddle. He's a real leader out there, and I think, his pursuit to the football has been as good as anybody on the team and as good as anybody I've seen at that position, in a while. It's been pretty impressive to watch.
Coach, I know it's like a 4-3 base, but realistically, how often are you in a 4-3 versus a 4-2 against these teams that you're going to play, would you think, based on the schedule and what you've scouted?
We have a nickel package that's a 4-2-5. We'll play 5 DBs, 2 box backers, and 4 D linemen. We have a base package where it's a 4-3, which we can play against, other personnel groupings, 2 backs, 1 tight end, 1 back, 2 tight ends. And we've practiced that, from what the guys have told me, we've actually practiced that more than we have in the past, because our opening opponent, App State, does do a good job running, 12 personnel and has an outstanding run game. And then we have a dime package where we play 3 down linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 DBs, which we just started to install in the last couple of days, for teams that are 4 and 5 wide receivers, things like that.
Is it safe to say that this personnel is built more for spread teams when you look at the size and the speed up front?
Yes, I think that's true. I think, and again, this is my first year here. I think we've recruited for that type of team and program for sure. And I think we have, the thing I like about, like I said, about the back end is I've been asked a couple times about different guys and positions. It's really about getting I say it all the time, what position does LeBron James play? He could play the point guard, he could play the shooting guard, he could play the small forward, power forward, in the center if he has to. Well, that's what I keep trying to tell Rashawn Golden or Micah Abernathy or guys like that, the more positional versatility they have, the better they're going to be. And, some of those DNs, because we have great depth there, positional versatility, we've talked to some of those guys on passing downs about moving inside, and, like what a Joey Bosa did at Ohio State or what a Robert Condici has done at Ole Miss. And we've shown them film of those guys and trying to create matchups and get the best players on the field for what the situation entails.
How do you handle that rotation at defensive end? You can go 3 deep on both sides, but you probably don't want to pull Derek Barnett off the field. How do you handle that?
Well, I think, and Derek Barnett, trust me, doesn't want to come off the field. He's as good as, I watch him practice every day, and I hear the scouts come in and say, he's not this height or he's not that. Well, watch the film, put the film on, and watch the guy practice on a daily basis. He practices as hard as anybody I've been around in a long, long time, and he's got an intensity to him. He's a savage when he's out on the field. But you're exactly right. The depth at the end is unique to anything I've ever been around. Derek and Corey Vereen are legit, productive players in this conference who've established that. But then you put Kyle Phillips in the game, and his potential is tremendous. And if we can keep him healthy, that's the key for him, obviously. Then you have Jonathan Kongbo, who's one of the guys who can provide some positional versatility. And he's still learning, but he's getting better, and he really wants to do very, very well. And then, the other 2 guys who have played really well are Damari Mixon and Darryl Taylor this camp. They've done exceptionally well. Each of them have flashed and made plays. And again, from what everybody tells me, and I wasn't here in the past, Mixon's playing as well as he's ever played.
How is Combo from an attitude standpoint taking moving inside sub?
I think it's how he's not the only one who's doing that. We have packages where Mixon's done it, Barnett's done it, and even Phillips has done it some. So, all those guys are doing a little bit of that stuff. And like I said, you present it, whether it's in the secondary up front, you present that LeBron James analogy that, he could play the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Well, hey, Jonathan, if we think the weak link's the guard, maybe we'll put you in a position where you can take advantage of a matchup there. If we think the weak link's the end, maybe all of a sudden we can put you and Corey on the same side, or you and Barnett on the same side, so they can't slide a protection one way or another, or something like that. Or maybe we can get into some 3-4 stuff and different things like that. So we're just kind of. I say this all the time. Everybody says, "What's your scheme?" The scheme is based on it's personnel based, not scheme based. It's identifying what players do well, putting them in position to be successful. And Jonathan and I, literally, before I came down here, we're having this conversation about all the different things that he can do. And I'm not going to ask him to do 25 different things. It's going to be asked to do 2 or things really well in a game. And the advantage is now we can rotate guys in and out and not have a significant drop off at that position. And hopefully, when it's a critical 3rd down or it's a 4th quarter stop that we need, we can have fresher players in the game.
When you guys go to that 4th, who is that 3rd linebacker? Kind of how is that
It's been Kenny Bynum, and he's played that before in the past. It's also been Dylan Bates, and Colton Jumpers practiced that position as well. It's just a Sam linebacker in a traditional 4-3 set. I could talk about Kenny all day long. He stands for everything that's right in college sports. He's a great student who did an internship program in England this summer. And to me, I always try to get Kenny, Danny O'Brien, or Troy Lewis to talk to the group, because they're the guys who've been here 5 years. So I have a lot of respect and admiration for him, and we're trying to provide him a role, and he's bought into that and understands that that's how he's going to contribute to helping us be the team we want to be.
With all the positional flexibility that you talked about, what's the mental capacity you have to do for your guys to be able to handle all of that? And how do you manage to make sure you're not putting too much on, whether it's Jonathan or somebody else, that they can do what you want them to do flexibility-wise, but it's not overloading?
You quality control yourself, and again, I like to think that we, on the defensive staff, I think we do a really good job. We're teachers first, so we take it, we present it whole part whole. We'll present it to the defense, then the position coaches will go back and kind of do their intricate parts, and then we'll come back out and walk through it. Then we go through the individual segment, as you guys watch in practice, I think on a daily basis. Then we go to the group segment, then the team segment. And so we do a lot of teaching with regard to that, and we do a lot of walkthroughs, and we do a lot of formation recognition, and we break it down even further. And I think the thing you do to quality control yourself is, there at some point becomes point of diminishing returns. When the guys are making mental errors, when they're playing slow. So as long as we can play fast, and keep in mind in camp here, I still think we're still in training camp mode. I mean, I want to get everything installed before Saturday when we go into Neyland and scrimmage, and then go back and say, this is the identity of Team 120, this is the identity of who we are. These are the guys that I think made the team if you're an NFL team. This is going to be their role, and now we can now we have 2.5 weeks before the App State game to kind of hone in and kind of focus on those things.
What have you seen from Nigel Warrior so far, and how's he factoring into that safety competition?
He's factoring in at a real high level. He's a very exceptionally talented player. I mean, he's as advertised. He's very instinctive. He wants to do well. He's very prideful. And the rest of that room, because I sit in on with those safeties a lot, has done a great job helping him. I mean, Evan Berry, Todd Kelly, Rashawn Golden, Stephen Griffin, Mike Abernathy have all tried to help him learn the package, because safety, a lot like middle linebackers, kind of the quarterback of the defense, so they have to be able to recognize formations, communicate clearly and loudly, get people lined up, and that's been the challenge for him, kind of picking those things up. But he definitely has the skill set to play at a really high level, and I think it's safe to bet that you're going to see him on the field real early.
Coach, we see you spending a lot of time with the safeties and individual drills. Is that all, historically what you've done, or is that kind of team specific to this group?
Both. I think, like I said, when Coach Jones hired me, I mean, he just said, do whatever you need to do. And I think if you look at our base, our nickel package, there's 5 DBs on the field. That's 5/11ths of the group. And I just think sometimes that's a little overwhelming for one player to coach both those guys. And I enjoy the teaching piece. I enjoy the individual section of practice. So, I said if I could take something off Willie's plate a little bit there and let him focus on the corners and nickels and individual, let me focus on the safeties, that'd be great. I don't think it's anything that they haven't done in the past. I think last year was a GA, quality control guy, GA who was coaching those guys. And then, so it gave me an opportunity to kind of be that guy.
And Coach, you mentioned the depth there. I mean, it looks like you have 6 guys who
At safety?
Yeah, that can really play.
Specifically safety?
Or just and nickel. I mean, it looks like it's a super deep position.
Yeah. I think we've had good days and bad days, but I think, Todd Kelly's a guy who's played a lot of football, and, like I said, you can coach a lot of years and not have guys who have 6 interceptions in their first 2 years. The ball finds him. Stephen Griffin's improved a lot. Evan Berry's very talented. Rashawn Golden can play a lot of different positions, and if we can, keeping him healthy, he has a chance to be a real good player. I think the guy who's played the best and most consistent through the first 10 practices or wherever we are is Mike Abernathy. I think that guy's a real legit player. He's, first of all, even better person. He's an ultimate teammate. He's unselfish. He practices hard. He practices the right way. He's focused. He's intense. He's intelligent. I think he's a guy who's going to have a big year.
Coach, I know you weren't here last year, but is there an extra emphasis that you guys have talked about as a staff on defensive ball skills? Because you guys seem to work at an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about that. I mean, and obviously when you quality control at the end of the year, you look at what could we be better at and what areas could we improve. And I mean, there were really a couple that 3 that we talked about, if you talk about football specifics. And one was improvement in the tackling area. One was improvement in ball disruptions. We've adopted the phrase hunt the ball, and one was just in the 1 minute situation at the end of games, closing out games. So hunt the ball's been something, that we've really focused on, whether it's, Willie or myself doing ball drills with the DBs, whether it's Fig doing ball drills with the linebackers, whether it's stripping, whether it's scooping up a ball in a team period when it's on the ground. And, yesterday we had a big day. We had 5 interceptions in the 2 practices yesterday, and that was good, and that's good. And I think the guys are more conscious of it. They're competing. They're working to get the ball a little bit more out, and that's something that I think we're capable of, not only being a team that can create takeaways, but scoring on defense as well.
What tells you what you need to do when you come in and you see the team, when you get a feel for them? What jumps out to you as things that you need to do to get the defense where you want to do?
Well, I mean, that probably hasn't changed since I first got here. I mean, I've said really the things Coach asked me to do is create a culture on the defensive side, and I think our guys are buying in. They have one another's back. We have leadership at each level. You talk about LaTroy Lewis and Barnett and Danny O'Brien up front. You talk about DK and Jalen at linebacker. You talk about Cam in the back end and TK. There's good leadership at each level. Then we talk about fundamentals. I still use the phrase techniques over tactics. We're still in that phase of camp. And these are college football players. They're not pro football players. We're still teaching them how to pursue, how to beat blocks, how to tackle. And they, the game's harder on defense. They're spreading across 53 yards of field. The field's big, and these guys are good athletes. Then bringing a more aggressive mentality. I'm sure people have talked about that a lot. That's kind of the reputation that we have. Bringing heat, bringing pressure, and I enjoy that aspect of the game. And then it's been about closing out games, and so I mean those are the things that I still look at, and I'm kind of more patient. Like if, I don't want to put the cart before the horse and say this is who we are. The identity of this team's still somewhat to be determined, and we're still kind of trying to figure it out. Saturday will go a long way to determining that when we have a good scrimmage in the stadium, when the coaches aren't standing behind them, telling them what to do or telling them where their eyes should be and things like that. And I'm excited because it's going to give us a chance to work our defensive staff mechanics too. Which it's kind of like a preseason NFL game to me, and then hopefully I'm going to go up in the box and be able to communicate to Willie and Thig and strip what we want to do and get our game day mechanics in order too. It's going to be a good practice for us as well.
When you think about coming in and taking over a unit like this with experience and expectations, how does that differ from maybe coming in with a full staff where you're trying to build a program from the ground up?
Yeah, I've talked about that a lot. I mean, I've had 2 other. I think you're a sum of all your experiences, and it's happened in 1994. Wow, it's been that long, right? I was a defense coordinator at Yale and inherited staff, and in 2007 at William & Mary I inherited staff. So I drew on those experiences of it's not my team, it's not their team, it's our unit, and the buy-in of the players, and just all that type of thing right there. That's important. And then I drew on the experiences from Vanderbilt and Penn State. When we went to Vanderbilt, it was a group that hadn't had a great deal of success before we got there. So I always said that's kind of like scorched earth. You go in, you blow it up, and you start over. Then you go to Penn State, and there's great tradition and great history, but we all went as a staff, so we brought our program. Here, I think the thing that was the challenge to me personally was, here's a team that was a top 20 unit last year, won their last 6 games, has a lot of confidence, has some playmakers coming back. So I personally would be silly coming in and trying to take 1 step back to go 2 steps forward when this team has great potential this year. So I think whenever I first met the staff, we had a lot of common. We felt the same way about football. They might have called it apples and I called it oranges, but we all got along real well philosophically. We knew where we wanted to be, and then player-wise, like it was about getting to know those guys, and I think it's all. I really kind of feel, like I said, we're not ahead, we're not behind, but I really like where it's coming. And I feel like we're starting to come together.
What's something about defending Josh that you don't learn from just watching him?
How good a runner he is, man. Like I said the other day, I mean, I think as a defensive play caller, we'd all prefer to go against. I don't know if nobody likes going against a mobile quarterback. I mean, Josh has the ability. He makes you think about anybody who's a mobile quarterback. Makes you think about some of the things you want to do pressure-wise, whether you want to play much man, different things like that. Because a mobile quarterback's a great equalizer right there. You can do everything right, the play can break down, and he can make a play. In addition to that, with some of the quarterback run things that they do, I think he's a great weapon for us, and it's the combination of all those things. The combination of defending heat, Jalen, Alvin, John Kelly's had a great camp, great spring and great camp, as you guys know, then all of a sudden, if you want to load up the box, you know, out on the perimeter, it's Preston or it's Josh or it's Josh Smith in the slot. Those guys have done really well. And I'm sure Devo talked a little bit about Tyler Bird. He's made some really good plays as well. So it's very challenging. Our offense is a pain in the butt.
How have Mosley and Martin looked in that corner competition opposite Cam?
Each have had good days and bad. I mean, but Mosley and Martin both had interceptions last night. They're both very prideful guys. They're working hard to improve each day. You know, and I think it's still a very open competition right now. I think those two. I think you know, you talk about the positional flexibility piece. Marquell Osborne played a significant amount of nickel in the spring, but we've given him some opportunities to play outside on the corner, and he's pretty good, man. And then the guy who's come in and really earned the trust and respect of his teammates and coaches is Balin Buchanan. I mean, he's a guy that we think can contribute now. I've heard people on the staff compare him to Cam Sutton when he was a freshman, and he's you know, he's long, he's athletic, he's got good ball skills, he's very composed. You know, you watch the freshmen when they get in, their heads spinning, they're going 100 miles an hour, and you look at him and the game's sort of slowed down to him, and it's very, very impressive to watch.
Coach, with some of the guys you brought in, he probably wouldn't have been the first choice if we were in a betting pool to lose his stripe. I mean, what did you
Oh,
see?
so you guys
from
knew
him?
that, okay.
You guys tweeted it out.
I didn't.
Well, I mean, a little.
That's what I'm talking about right there. I felt exactly the same way. You know, I felt exactly the same way. I mean, you heard about Kongbo. Obviously, Batuli's an in-state guy. I mean, Blakely came from a state championship team. Nigel, you know, those are the Marquell and DJ were the early enrollee guys. And here's a guy who, you know, first day you're watching one-on-ones, you go, who's 28? Oh, Jesus, who's 28? You know, and he jumps back in there, and what he does, and lesson to anybody here, he plays the techniques as they're coached and plays them to the best of his ability, and he just keeps his mouth shut and does his job. And I think when you think about what Cam Sutton was probably a lot like as a freshman, it's probably exactly what he's like, and it's not going to surprise me that if he's going to have a great career here.
What ends has done the best?
What you do.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Just what ends have done the best job, just in terms of adapting to those occasional moves inside, like we talked about earlier? Is there one who's kind of adapted particularly well, or?
No, all of them have. I think I wouldn't say that one's been better. They've all embraced it, and Derek's done well, and he's done it before. You know, when he and last year, I think he and Majid, they had a package where he and Majid were on the same side at different times, so he gets it. And Jonathan's excited about it now. And again, literally, we were sitting talking about opportunities and ways to utilize him. You know, right before I came down here, Damari Mixon's done it, and Kyle Phillips have done it. They've done it in 3-down packages where they've actually been a zero technique and done things like that. So, you know, again, I think it's how it's presented to you, and you know, not hey, you're a D tackle. You know, it's hey, you know, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to get some more speed and athletic ability in the game, and we really want you in a position where maybe you're playing over a guard or doing this in this situation. Here's some examples. You pull up some film of ways that we used it at Vanderbilt or Penn State, or you pull up guys in the NFL that do it. Use positional flexibility, or like I said, I mean, the example that I use a little bit is Joey Bosa. I mean, Joey Bosa. You know, we played Ohio State the last 2 years, and I'd watch him run by our tackle, and then I'd watch him run over the guard. And, you know, not just Penn State. I don't mean to say it like that against anybody that he was playing against. And he was just a really, really good football player.
Bob, you've been really complimentary with Corey Berry really all offseason. What about him has you kind of setting the bar so high publicly going into this season?
I think his film speaks for itself. I mean, his film last year, I mean, I think people have kind of, the only thing I'm a little pissed at him is I think he said I had no swag the other day.
He said you were low on the swag.
So,
He didn't say no swag.
I still haven't said anything about that, but that one kind of caught me a little bit back right there. I know I'm allowed to say it, but he's not allowed to say it. No, he again, he's been as advertised. Again, I keep talking about him and Barnett, and it's funny, all the pro scouts come in and they say this, that, and the other thing. I don't know how you got to measure how hard a guy plays and their productivity on the field, and that's when I look at those guys. He's a what do you need me to do, coach? Okay, I got you. You know, whatever the job entails, he does his job within the framework of the unit, and he does it very, very well. So I've really enjoyed working with Corey, and I think he embodies an ultimate teammate.
Did coaching at some of the places that you coached at early in your career sort of help you, I guess, maybe get a better appreciation for the fact that if the guy's not the prototypical size, he can still go out there and make plays?
Yeah, I trust my evaluation. I trust our staff's evaluation, and you're exactly right. I mean, you know, it's not like the NFL where you can, you know, cut and waive guys and bring in new guys. You guys got to train and train your guys in the scheme that you want. And I'll say it again, it's about getting. I always say this, you know, it's about. You've heard me say passion, toughness, and a team first mindset. It's about 11 men functioning as a unit out on the field, and it's about doing your job within the framework of the team. And I still believe defensive football is all about that. It's all about 11 guys working together, flying to the football, understanding alignment and assignment, their key, their responsibility, running the ball like their hair's on fire, and gang tackling. And when the ball's in the air, man, we're going after it.
With everything that, I guess, that you want to do defensively, and I guess any defense for that matter, when you have a middle linebacker like Darren, who's as intelligent as he is, who runs like he does, who can call out things and be responsible, how much more comfortable does that make what you can do?
Catching on that, it's exactly right. I mean, and that's one of the things. I like linebackers and safeties that are both smart and tough, and because I don't think all 11 guys need to be high football IQ guys. Matter of fact, sometimes those corners and DMs just go out and rush the passer and cover that guy. You know, but those guys need to be able to. They need to be composed. They need to be extensions of the coaching staff. They need to be able to recognize formations, communicate clearly, quickly, concisely in front of 102,455 screaming maniacs on a Thursday night or a Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. And that's what he does. And he enables us, like a quarterback, to get into the right call versus the right formation. And it allows you maybe to do some autos, alerts, or check with me type things. And really the guys who have showed me a lot of that thus far are him, obviously. Colton Jumper is very good at that as well. And you know, Todd Kelly and Mike Abernathy have been really, really, you know, good in camp as far as communication and getting the guys in the right coverage and really helping the younger players out.
Coach,
You had several guys that were safeties in high school and they've evolved into linebackers here, including your best linebacker, Reed Laban. Are they different mentally when you get them? How does that change other than just adding weight?
I think the game's changed, like you said. I think, I always say this, in these spread offenses, I think, you know, they used to say in baseball, like the Cardinals guy here, you know, they got the, you want to be good up the middle. Well, in these spread offenses, I think you've got to be good right up the alleys right there. You know, with the ends, the outside linebackers, and the safeties are like going to McDonald's, and it's large, medium, and small, the same guy right there. They all have to be athletic, and they all have to be able to run and be able to move in space and do those type of things. So, you know, to me, you know, you look at the guys who got drafted in the first round of the NFL draft this year at linebacker, whether it's Darren Reed from Ohio State or Miles Jack from UCLA. It's all about, you know, fast guys, speed guys. That's the new wave, you know, linebacker at the highest level of college football in the NFL. So, you know, recruiting, I don't necessarily think all the time it works out that a guy transitions from safety down to linebacker. I think there's a lot of times that can happen, and if he embraces the fact that he's in the box a little bit and doing those things. You bring up Maben, but McDowell was a high school safety. Cortez Sapp was a high school safety. You know, Elliott Berry was a track kid in high school. So all those guys are guys who can really, really run and do well in those situations.
Is that a byproduct of the RPO?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, you know, the offensive guys don't think they can be wrong. If we outnumber them in the box, you know, nobody teaches stock blocking out on the perimeter. They spread you out, then nobody teaches stock blocks, and they run an interior run play with pass routes on the perimeter. And if you want to stop the run, then somehow, some way, guys in space are going to have to make spatial tackles. And if you come out today, that's what we're going to be working on, a lot of spatial tackles, because we didn't do a very good job at that in the last time we went live. And you know, we're going to be working on that, linebackers and corners, safeties and linebackers and things like that. And then, you know, so those guys need to be athletic and be able to move their feet and tackle in space. 100% right.
Coach, who are some of the guys that are, you mentioned tackling there, that have come who are some of the guys that have come the longest way and maybe improved in tackling, especially out of those secondary guys?
Well, up front, I think we've been pretty good. At linebacker, I feel like Kirkland's been he's been a beast this camp and tackled really well. In the secondary, I think, you know, I think, again, we haven't done a lot of live, you know, so I can't really say that, but Abernathy's been pretty consistent. You know, Todd Kelly's been a pretty good tackler. Gaulden's been a pretty good tackler. You know, the corners, you know, Sutton's a very, very good tackler, I think. Emmanuel Mosley's is a good tackler. Balin Buchanan's a really good tackler. They've shown me that they have the ability to tackle in space.
You have a number of guys on defense with Bloodlines.
That's cool, I think.
How important is that, or how much does that help guys that have that?
We had Todd Kelly. I think I've told you guys I do a joke of the day. Sometimes I have a freshman stand up and tell a joke, you know, in the defensive meeting. Some of them funnier than others. And then we've done a word of the day. And Todd Kelly talk today, and he talked about, how much Tennessee football's meant to him, and his father obviously went here as a VFL, and he's in his third year in the program, kind of graduating from a young player to a veteran. And he talked about roles today. That was his word of the day: role. Understand your role, do your job, and that was great. Khalil McKenzie is obviously a VFL on the defensive side, a Nigel Warrior. And I still remember the first conversation I ever had with Nigel Warrior. I said, "Who's the best DB?" Because there's only one DB, Dale Carter. So I mean, they're proud of that, and they have great pride, and they play with great pride, and that's, to me, I think, and this, I talk about this all the time. I think every kid who grows up in the state of Tennessee should grow up with, I'll give my all for Tennessee today on their, that should be the blanket we give them, and every kid should grow up dreaming of being at this place, with the tradition, the history, the facilities, the administration, the people we have here, and this is a special place.
Bob, do you think Dylan Bates can help you this year?
Yeah, I do. I like Dylan. He's got to stay healthy. That's been his big. There's another guy. I apologize. I probably should have mentioned him too. You could go right down the line, but Dylan's a great, kid. Football's really, really important to him. And again, I talked about him when we go to that 4-3 package. He and Kenny have both played that Sam linebacker position, and he's done a good job in his role. He can be on special teams, and he's in the mix at that will linebacker position with McDowell and Sapp to back up Jalen, and he plays with Kenny at that Sam position. And he's a guy who texts me or calls me as often as anybody and says, "Oh, Coach, I'll do anything to get on the field," and that's part of that Tennessee pride, no doubt.
Well, when you talk about that joke of the day, is that something that you just call a guy to Matt?
No.
Just randomly, okay, it's you today.
No, it's not trying to make you think fast. I'll give him a 24-hour warning right there, but think of something. Although a couple of jokes you'd have thought that I just asked him right on the spot.
Not being specific, who had the best one so far?
Jaquan Blakely. It was a tongue twister. So he made the players come up and do a tongue twister. It was very funny.
One more question.
We're wasting the question. That's one of the questions. 2 questions. If I pick up the paper tomorrow and read about Jaquan Blakely's joke.
Who had the worst joke?
Congo. No.
Why do you like Galvin at safety as opposed to nickel?
I don't necessarily like him at safety as opposed to nickel. I like him at both.
Okay.
I like him at safety because I think he's a great quarter safety. I think he can play man-to-man. I think he's tough and he's a blitzer. But I guess, let me put it this way. The same skills that are required to be a great nickel are the same skills that are required to be a safety. So there's not really any reason I like him more at one position than the other. Ultimately, as I've said this a couple times now, be about getting the best 5 players on the field. I mean, that's really what it's about. And if ultimately that means he's a nickel, Abernathy's here, Kelly's there, or Foreman's here, Galden's here, Kelly's there. I feel very, very comfortable and confident with all those different scenarios. So,
does your defense have a nickname to it? I mean, I know you and I have talked about Narduzzi before in his press quarters, but do you have any name or any base lingo that goes along with some of your packages or your defenses?
When our dime's called the Cheetah package. I mean, I know when Chief was here, I think he had a Patton Mustang package that he's always done or whatever. For a lot longer than I was here, they've called, the defensive units called themselves Orange Swarm, and I think the guys take great pride in that. And when you think about Swarm, you think about 11 men, wearing the power tee on their helmet and their orange uniforms, flying to the football, and really more than a name, that's the identity I want you to think about right there when you watch us play. I want you to see that a group of guys that play tremendous passion, tremendous toughness, T-toughness as Coach Jones would call it, and a team first mindset.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
That was long today, man.